Okay, so Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Jim, for your presentation here today. I'm from the constituency of Cavan Monaghan, and I waited with bated breath in your opening commentary, if you like, on your plan, your national plan, and I heard lots about the south of the country and the transport hub and Waterford and Cork and Limerick, and I'm delighted for those areas that are so well, I suppose, facilitated in terms of rail transport. I wondered if you could maybe elaborate or maybe disclose some of the plans you may have for north of, we'll say, the Galway to Dublin line. I know Sligo was mentioned, and I appreciate how animated and passionate Deputy McLaughlin got about that particular line. Obviously, I have a keen interest. There are lines and existing lines, as we know, to Navan and on to Kingscourt, and we have very much got a very heavy industry there in terms of what Kingspan and gypsum and other industries in East Cavan and South Monaghan, in terms of, I suppose, the indigenous industry there and how much it could be facilitated and expanded upon, the potential that they may have, or the capacity to grow, if open freight rails were facilitated. So I'm just wondering if you could maybe talk to us a little bit today about your plans for a rail line to Navan, if that is the second phase of that. Progressively look forward to reopening the lines that exist to Kingscourt in East Cavan. I would have to say, as a constituency, are very much behind the curve in terms of transport infrastructure. We have an M3 that stops very abruptly at the Cavan-Meade border, and we have no motorway into Cavan 10. The N2 is still not upgraded to motorway status, and we have no rail line. Even though we have a rail line, we have no functioning rail line. Obviously, I would make the case that, for freight or heavy rail to be the first phase to Navan and then on to Kingscourt would be, hugely significant for the area. And unfortunately, I see myself travelling to Dublin how our motorways are now clogged up again with cars and vans for, people working in Dublin, filled with, a van, maybe 5 lads again. We're back to that boom situation again in terms of where people have to travel, and they do have to travel. And I mean, repeatedly we're told by the IDA, and their lack of visits are being able to bring companies, the big companies, to Cavan, counties like Cavan and Monaghan. We're actually in single digit figures in terms of the visits. It's always about the lack of infrastructure, and I'm sure that the big companies who look to Cavan Monaghan look for broadband, they look for motorways, and they look for rail. So I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about your plans for the Cavan Monaghan line that exists, as I said, to Navan and progressively to Kingscourt potentially for the future.
Deputy Smith, the Navan Kingscourt line, it has potential. Is it in any of our current planning? No, it's not. It's not part of the NDP. And if I link it to some of Deputy Kenny's comments as well around freight, we have a policy, and even my predecessor had a policy of maintaining the lines we have and maintaining the infrastructure we have, and not doing what was done in the 60s, where we closed and abandoned lines and then we lost them. So looking to the future, we recognise that a lot of these lines may become very, very relevant. So we intend to keep these lines in our ownership, so to speak, and as plans develop for them, be able to move forward with them. Kingscourt currently, there isn't a plan either with the department or with us, and to be honest, we haven't put any plan to the department that says, can we now go to Kingscourt? I'm happy to start looking at it. It would go into the next phase of NDP, but I take the underlying point that if we don't start planning for these things, they will never happen. But
could I ask you if you would do that, to start looking at that, because I think that's hugely relevant, especially in light of Brexit, and also, I suppose, the pressure in terms of CO2 emissions. I think it would be foolish not to be thinking that far ahead. And can I ask you the question, can you confirm to me, is that line being maintained to Kingscourt at the moment?
Kingscourt, I think it's been out to Tara Mines, yes, and beyond. I think there's
Kingscourt and Cavan?
Kingscourt and Cavan. It's under care and maintenance, Colin, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's still a green
rail. Yeah. Yeah, it's just.
I would suggest to you, being very familiar with the line, because I drive by it most days, that it's not being maintained, or perhaps not being maintained the way it should, because I do think the infrastructure is there, and there could be more work done to ensure that it is maintained. I appreciate the fact these things take time, planning needs to be put in place, and funding needs to be put in place, and I do think ultimately the most important thing at this moment in time, which can be done, is to maintain the line.
Okay. Take your point. Sorry, the freight tends to be high volume, long haul. That's the model that works very, very well for any freight operation. That said, we have some freight operations across the network at the moment, and we actually have started my board has asked me to look at what the future of freight is, so timing is probably good in that we are now starting to say what opportunities could we start looking at for freight because of the environmental impact, because of what we could move off of road. So we are re-looking at our freight operation. We cannot subvent freight within our own. Freight has to wash its face, so we can't subvent it, or we can't use any public funds for it. That's just the way it's structured.